there. Like do you have a purple glow light or something?
Yeah, and I had it's like a tube light. That's
I see.
yeah.
I like it. I like the effect.
Yeah, you can kind of see. Yeah, you can see it right there in the window.
Yeah. Pops.
It does. It pops. We're live.
Oh, we
So
are live. Oh, good. Okay, I didn't realize that. All right. Okay, let's do a fresh, clean start here, though.
yep.
Hail cheaters, and welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. It's Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how were you during this crazy Gameweek 29? How are you doing? How were you doing? What a wild one. I mean,
Ups, downs,
incredible.
strikes and gutters. Definitely more of a gutter-filled week, but there's a lot to sort of pick through in terms of like what a game week like this means to dialed-in managers.
Sure.
Dialed-in managers will think, I should have done better, especially ones on free hit like you and I. You would think we should have done better.
Right.
But how much better would you expect to do when you basically just brought in a ragtag team of mercenaries?
Yeah.
I got nothing apart from an assist from Morgan Gibbs-White. I still had a game week rank of 1.3 million.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
And I had a chunky green arrow. So
mine was 588K, which is crazy.
So there you go, even better, right? So in that sense, the free hitters, you kind of just had to really on purpose soil your pants to screw it up. Like there was really no way to not get a green arrow if you free hit. But if you didn't free hit, I also feel like you're generally happy with sort of like holding rank, holding serve in a way.
I think you've got to be delighted unless you took like a -8 or a -12 just to save the free hit. But if otherwise, I saw a lot of people who were like, I can get to 8 on a -4, and that felt like a totally or 7, maybe even 7. I feel like I would probably try to. I don't know why 8 is like some magic number that I have, but that felt like the number you needed to get to cover some of the big assets. I think what was interesting about this one was I don't feel a ton of regret. I mean, first of all, I'm on 27 points, which felt huge, right? Because I had Gibbs-White, and then I went for Fofana over Morris, and I really was strongly considering Mooney's, and then I got a little spooked. It wasn't just you talking about Mooney's like possibly being at risk. It was also there was some news that what's his name was back as well. What? I'm getting so old all of a sudden, Brett. I cannot remember anyone's name.
Give me
anymore.
a hint. Who were we talking about?
Raul Jimenez.
Yeah.
If you follow my train of logic there, there was a player. Was there a forward who was back for Fulham? It was Raul Jimenez. So that was right. So that was. But anyway, I got there on my own, thankfully. But Raul Jimenez was back as well, and I didn't necessarily think he was going to start, but I just sort of thought, well, Muniz may not play that long. He scores one goal, which was fine, and then he scores a second one that he had very little to do with, I would argue. But he was.
Well, he was. I mean, that's a fox in the box goal right there, which is
the second
what you
one.
want from your number 9.
That's true. When it first happened, I thought it was like it deflected off his leg. It was almost like he didn't really do anything. And then on replay, it was like, okay,
it's like a Lukic goal.
Yeah. But it was kind of so in the end, he finished on 13 points. So anybody who, like, if I had literally just kept the team that I had, because I had Anthony Robinson, right, who finished on 11 points. And if I brought in Mooney's, I would have had Dubravka, Son, I would have captain Son. If I literally just made that one move, I would be on more points than I would have been on my free hit, even with only like 6 players for this game week. It's, so it's kind of remarkable how you had to get a couple right. And so getting Fofana was enough of a difference maker, and also having Gibbs-White as you did. I sort of like, I was not as high on Gibbs-White, and then I just sort of, basically my thinking as we got closer to
finish that statement, as high on Gibbs-White as
you were. Yeah, I was gonna say you and many others. I mean, he became a popular pick, I feel like, down the stretch.
Well, as they do after I shout them out on the Always Cheating podcast.
That's true. And have we heard from any Mooney's managers who were upset that you? I guess people still got him. We didn't talk everybody out of Mooney's.
Well, listen, hindsight merchants come for me. I don't care.
And he was subbed in the 60th minute, right? So it was like he didn't play that long. But also, I mean, who thought that Spurs would would just lay down and
capitulate.
and
Yeah,
capitulate.
I thought the commentary was spot on that match, and that Spurs were just like wildly underprepared. Now,
Yeah,
you can't
yeah,
discount just how wonderfully Fulham played,
sure.
and they did, but Spurs was just a shadow of any professional outfit you'd expect to see.
Yeah, and I think that it was just kind of it was just, I mean, it was just a weird weekend. My thought process ultimately was, I just want to fade Luton kind of across the board. Just a feeling that like they were going to be completely fried after that massive, like a devastating, honestly, 4-3 loss away to Bournemouth, right? Up 3-0 at halftime, concede 4.
Humiliating,
Yeah, real a tough loss, right? And so I thought, okay, let me
emasculating.
okay, like I think we're good. But it was, they, and so yes, I brought in Sells, which almost worked out. I mean, that was kind of a bummer. He was on 9 points after like in the 89th minute, and then they conceded like a set piece goal kind of late, and then he got a yellow for time wasting as well. So that was a nice little double whammy there. But yeah, and so that was one of the reasons I got Gibbs White. Is I just thought, well, let me just have more players in this Luton match who are not Luton players, and that's why I felt okay not having Morris. I thought he looked completely spent by the end of the Bournemouth match at midweek. I did bring in Doughty, who was subbed off at halftime. Maybe I guess, but again, I mean, Doughty had a corner that there was a handball, but like he actually could have picked up an assist in that match as well, right? So I don't really. So I guess the point is, I'm on 27 points, but I don't look at my squad and think, oh, I should have done this. I should have done this. I should have done this. Like there's no scenario where I wouldn't have had Tony, or I wouldn't have had Bowen, or I wouldn't have had Son, or I wouldn't have had Madison, wouldn't have had Watkins. I mean, it's just crazy that basically every single that Reguilon at -3 in that match is crazy. Pedro Porro on 1, Doughty on 1. I mean, it's all you can kind of do is sort of hope that like the percentages break your way, right? And every single high percentage player didn't, right? I mean, like Gibbs White was kind of the only player, and he wasn't even like in the full on template, right? He was sort of like a second tier level, like kind of template player, right? So, I mean, how do you explain every single FPL asset that anybody wanted failing to deliver this week? Like, what's the answer, Brandon? I need to know.
Well, yeah, I guess like it's one of those weeks, but that's such a facile sort of description. How do you like? Part of my rubric of looking at this week and the free hit was, let me sit down and just project the scores. What do I think is going to happen in any of these matches? There were 4 matches. All 4 of them went counter to what I had predicted.
Right.
Like in an extravagant manner. I mean, I'll go ahead and share my team here, and they'll just give
I want to
us,
see it.
yeah, more of a detailed view here. I really put my chips on my free hit in the Brentford basket because I went with Flecken in goal. I just thought the most cashable thing in game week 29 was going to be Burnley not doing anything.
Yeah.
Was and that was a risk because Brentford had been defending terribly and they were on the road, but Burnley
I saw paid transporter Paul Parsons this weekend, Brandon, on Saturday, and he and I both suffered through Flecken for about 10 weeks, and so we felt like that was that although it didn't really make a difference in the end. I don't know, was there a single keeper? I guess Martinez, because they didn't count that second goal. He's the one who ended up on 5 points, right? So
yeah, he
kind of right
miraculously got some bonus points there. But Reguilon just like really proved like how he has played his way out of the Premier League in less than 365 days. So congratulations to him. An absolute pitiful career he's had in the Premier League. So he gone.
You're salty tonight.
But I thought if Brentford, I liked having a little bit of an edge there with the double Brentford defense if that clean sheet had come through, and obviously it was nowhere close to coming through. And then I was relatively template across the board with the free hit. Maybe Morris and Gibbs White were kind of on the edge there, but huge disappointment in Tony. And I don't know how much Tony was hamstrung by Brentford going down to 10 men, because he honestly looks like he's signed a contract for another club already. He's gone. Like the The
I thought he
Brentford
had some
project
moments.
seems like it's over now.
I mean, he set up Vissa for like a Vissa for a great chance that he blew, right, when he took that free kick really fast and sells no, who yeah, somebody made a great save in that one. And yeah, it was just a really tough I thought Tony was okay, and I think the yellow card was it came from, it's a bad tackle, but I think it came from frustration, right, just feeling like I can't believe we're losing to
Sure.
these guys.
Yeah, a striker's yellow card. But
Yep.
even so, I mean, you just look at the score, and it's like
Yep.
the big blockbuster score is the deepest person on my bench with Anthony Robinson.
Yep.
Even still, that green arrow takes me up to 483, which is my
Oh, look
highest
at that.
rank.
8 in a row. Wow.
Yeah, so it's still a good run. You would always hope for more when you have the upper hand on a free hit like that.
Sure.
But so I'm trying to figure out how the story will be remembered, because people argued against the free hit going into 29 because the majority of teams playing this week were so poor that it wasn't worth getting their assets.
Right.
I'm still not convinced that's true, because you think it was set up for a team like Spurs. I mean, even Fulham proved that they're not a poor squad. I mean, what do you think about that argument?
Well, I mean, the players
this
who did well for me are the players in the bad teams, right? I mean, getting 8 from Fofana and 7 from Gibbs White was the difference between a green arrow and nothing. It was the players that everybody would have had, whether you free hit or not, that failed to deliver. And I mean, I don't know. It's like having Jared Bowen for a home match is never a bad pick, right? Having James Madison for a match, having Porro, like these don't feel like crazy, like reckless. And also, I mean, first of all, I think it's fine. Like if you didn't free hit, it's I think you probably like that's a plus in your favor at this point, clearly, right? Especially if you didn't like wreck your team to cobble together 7 or 8 players for this game week. Probably worked out in your favor, right? I saw some people on Twitter who brought in like Moonies, right? Like I was sort of joking about before, like literally like that he alone would have made the difference, right, for a lot of people. But also like you can play the hindsight game, of course, but I also think like in general, I'm not convinced that the free hit later on is going to net you that much more anyway. Like it certainly could, but I mean, if you do it in 37, that's like, I mean, if you do it in 34, I think that's probably the time to do it because it's probably a little bit safer. But 37 is a really tricky double at all times, right? Because usually by the time game week 37 rolls around, something like 12 of the teams have absolutely nothing to play for, right? At least half the Premier League, right? And then you're in a position where some teams will double, and you're going to have to drop players who like really good players who only play once, right? That'll be true like in game week 34, for example, where one of the teams that won't double would be a team like Man City. Like you're not going to be able to just take a free hit and bring in 11 doublers necessarily. I mean, you could, but it's not necessarily the optimal move, right? So I think like part of the appeal of this double or of a free hit in 29 was that you just you brought in players for this game week that you don't want to have in your squad otherwise, right? Like there's almost nobody, including the players who delivered for me and Gibbs White and Fofana that I would want going forward. I mean, hilariously, the one player I would want is Moonies, who plays Sheffield United in game week 30. But so I honestly just don't feel any regret over playing the free hit. I don't think I mean, it just feels like a gamble that didn't pan out. Like, but I don't know. I mean, like, how often are Son, Madison, and Porro going to get a combined 5 points? How often is Reguilon going to get a -3 away to Burnley? Right? Like that's a match where you absolutely would expect some kind of return from him or Tony. I mean, even Bowen and Kudus and Paqueta all blanking. Watkins, who like has barely blanked ever this season, blank. It's just sort of like across the board. It was just a really kind of freakish game week in a lot of ways, right? And
we're farmers, Josh, and we're just trying to reap the largest crop possible. The whole going back to the whole concept of playing a double game week. The benefit of playing a double is you get more fixtures for your guys.
Yeah,
and I think that even though we had poor free hits, we still had chunky green arrows, and that proves the theory of just get as many fixtures as possible into your game week squad. Now, that argument then spins toward like play the free hit and the double later on.
Yeah.
But then we can have the argument about, well, I'd rather have the better players. Like the interesting thing about game week 29 was all the guys that we've relied upon, namely Saka, Foden, Holland, Salah, the Liverpool guys, they just didn't play. So we were grasping at straws, and we march on. So yeah, I think it's an interesting game week 29 is an interesting lesson that we can look back upon.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I will say too is when I look ahead to my game week 30 squad, basically there's almost no one from game week 29 on that team, right? And that feels great. I think, and we've got a couple weeks to think about what we're going to do for I just actually changed my captain in real time as you and I were talking.
Whoa, okay.
I still had it on Solanke from game week 28. So I'm literally setting my bus team in real time, Brandon, as you and I talk here.
I will say I set my bus team earlier this weekend, and I controversially have kept the captain on Dominic Solanke. Will that last for 2 weeks?
Yeah,
perhaps not, but I do love an team playing Everton at home. So
what about Cole Palmer home though? Burnley hosting or Chelsea hosting Burnley. I mean, that guy. I think especially with Arsenal and Man City playing each other, I think Palmer might end up being a possible consensus pick for game week 30. The thing to remember too is that we have 2 weeks to go until game week 30. So Cole Palmer has 14 full days to get injured, Brandon, ahead of game week 30, which
and the international duty. Yeah. So he'll be on the battlefield.
This whole Ben White thing was weird. Like it's just like Ben White and feuding with the England national team or something like that. Doesn't feel, he feels like the most like. Yeah. I never heard him say a single interesting thing in my life. Like it's such a weird,
great player, thing. Great player. Yeah, he seems like a corny guy though.
Corny. That's a nice. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I know some people are already looking at game week, about wild carding game week 30. Personally, that's not what I'm looking at, and just my rule in general is I don't like to wild card if I look at my team for the game week ahead and I like that team, right? I don't like to wild card from a place of theory, right? Like I am going to do this to set myself up for whatever. If I like the team that's in front of me, then that's fine. And I'll save a transfer if that's the case. I actually think the move should be fairly easy, I think in game week 30, because at the moment, I think it probably makes sense to make a move for, although I guess it made more sense before this game week. I was thinking I really wanted to bring in like Porro or a doggy. And now after this match, I'm like, I guess I still want to do it for a home match versus Luton. But weirdly, I almost felt like Udagi was like a slightly more active player. Like I gotta consider. I want to look at some underlying stats for Porro and Udagi over the next few weeks. I continue to feel like Porro has been kind of diminished now that. Like the importance of Porro has been a little diminished now that Madison's back. It feels like Madison has kind of sucked up some of those, free kicks and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. But what about Salah though? So I was looking at my squad for game week 30 and I'm thinking, I could even roll a transfer. This seems fine. And then I realized, oh right, Salah, he's out there. It's sort of like realizing that like Jason Voorhees just got released from prison or something like that.
Yeah.
You're like he's out there, he's among us. We got to protect ourselves. I mean, we've got 2 weeks to sort of mull this over, but how have you thought about the imperative of getting to me, I can't really do it seamlessly with my squad. I kind of need the wild card to nicely get Salah back in.
Yeah.
So now I have to start doing some calculations of what's the cost benefit of saving the wild card and trying to fade Salah for 1 or 2 more game weeks.
Yeah, I mean it's not easy. I mean, to do it in my case, I mean even on a wild card, I think it would get kind of tricky, right? I mean, you talked about possibly captaining Solanke. I don't know how a player like Solanke could survive a wild card if you want to get in Salah, right? Or if you drop Son, who plays Luton at home. Right. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of dropping Holland just ever, basically, right? But especially not
Mm-hmm.
for a home match. I'm not going to drop Palmer. I don't really want to drop Saka, especially if I'm not going to wild card until after 34, and there's a good chance of Arsenal doubling in 34. So I'm not going to drop Watkins, right? And so you sort of look at it and you're like, there's no way I can have Salah right now, right? It's sort of like there's like I honestly think I'm just going to have to go without him in game week 30 because I can't. I really I don't know. Even with I guess maybe I guess there's no way to have Son and Salah. That's really what it comes down to. Like, can you have Son, Salah, Holland, and Saka? I think that's a really tricky thing to do unless you go down to like all 4.5s for your defense, no
The
bench.
way we were doing it at the start of the season was no Saka, and that
Right.
was and
Easier
then
than, yeah.
and then here Foden is as well. So I think it's
Yeah.
Saka and Foden are the ones that get pared down. Maybe Solanke can survive
Yeah.
surgery like that because I don't want to drop Solanke down to somebody like Morris or I mean Muniz maybe.
Right. But again, you want to do that before the Everton match, right? Or like,
No.
I just think like, again, if I kind of like my team enough that I mean, I guess the question is Salah going to be so heavily owned and so highly captained in game week 30 that you need to like consider a wild card, you need to consider serious surgery, basically just to cover him as a pick, right? And I think the answer is no, but maybe we have to wait a week and kind of take the temperature after the first, week or so. See how much like Salah
Sure.
fever there is over the next.
Just
7
to
days.
highlight it, I mean, I think it's going to be a real conversation come game week 31 when Liverpool hosts Sheffield United, the basement team.
Oh my God.
At Anfield.
So maybe then.
They host Brighton at Anfield, and you're kind of like, okay, but then it's Sheffield United at home, Manchester United away, always a great fixture for Salah.
Yeah.
Palace, Fulham, West Ham, Spurs. Yeah, so Liverpool, yeah, we're going to be talking about them quite a bit.
Yeah, let's do a couple a couple notes then for the game weeks ahead. Just like one thing I want to note is that so game week 30 again is 2 weeks off. We have the international break. Do you have any international break plans, Brian? Anything you're doing? You're going to go visit your nieces and nephews? Are you
big. I'm still kind of putting it together, but maybe I'm going to throw a family reunion together for next weekend.
That's great. An impromptu, like a flash mob style family reunion where everyone just you tell every member of your family that you urgently need to meet them for coffee at like a train station or something.
Yep.
All right. Well, I like this. My
mom will be expecting to say that, I'm having a baby, but then I'm like, well, it's an international break, and let's take a look at the fixture difficulty rating table.
You just start playing some music, and you're like, all right, come on.
Yeah.
All right.
New beach house.
Exactly. So I think. So we got 2 weeks to sort things out a little bit. It's actually NCAA tournament weekend next week, which is great because I would say traditionally the week that I like cared the least about the Premier League and fantasy is that NCAA tournament week, right? Because it just sucks up kind of all of my sports energy for a couple of days. Sure. So I'm glad the international break is falling this week, and it's ideal timing. So from my perspective, so double game week 34 announcements should come before the game week 30 deadline. This is per Ben Crown. I'm always happy to give him credit because he does such a good job of keeping us.
He's got that dog in him.
Stuff. He's got that dog in him. Yeah, exactly. A TM. So I think that he. What we know is that it's Coventry, right? Is Coventry the fourth team? So we have Coventry, Man United, Man City, and Chelsea that are through to the semifinal. Kind of an interesting mix. I'm glad that Coventry's in there. I always like when there's one kind of wild card that makes a semifinal round, right? It's like if it was just 4. Usually it's like 3 Champions League level squads and 1 blah squad, right? It's like, but the Coventry is like a truly oddball.
Could have been Wolves,
right?
Yeah, could have been the blah side.
Crystal Palace. I mean, no offense to any of these clubs, right? But just like a club where you're like, that's you just kind of know what's going to happen, right? Because it'd be like a Premier League fixture, right? It's like if Man City hosts Crystal Palace, it's probably 3-0, right? But Coventry City at Wembley, it's like, well, who knows, right? It's like it's sort of I don't know. So I'm kind of excited about that. Just like in a kind of like any given Saturday, you might get something cool out of that. So those are the 4 teams that'll play in the semifinals of the Champions League, which means that we have a little bit of an idea of what the double game weeks are going to look like. We know for a fact, for example, that Man City, Spurs, Man United, Newcastle, and Chelsea will all double in game week 37. We also know that Chelsea will have a second double in game week 35 or game week 36. These are locks, Brandon. This bit of news. Sure. Teams that could double, kind of expected to double if they can make it work, around European matches and things like that, would be that could double in 34 are quite a significant number of teams. Arsenal, Liverpool, Wolves, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton, and your beloved Sheffield United. So, Brandon, I think what's the question now is, you either, if you still have your wild card, the decision now is, do you wild card to target game week 34, or do you wild card to target game week 37? And my feeling at the moment is I am going to wait. Like, I'm just going to wait and see if we get some more fixture. Like, I don't want to even really think about it too deeply until we know what the doubles are going to look like in 34, right? My instinct is that my preference would be to basically roll with the team I've got into 34, right? So you have game week 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. That's 5 transfers plus any like hits that you might take or whatever, right? So, and I already have some players that will be doubling in 34, right? So it kind of, I think, makes sense to try to see if you can get away with putting together, because you're probably still going to have some single game weekers, right, in 34. So like Man City, for example, some Man City assets. So at least Holland. So I think that's, and then after 34, then 35 would be when I wild card, and the wild card would be really focused on having those teams that double in game week 37. I think that's what makes the most sense for me. But again, it kind of just depends on who doubles in 34, right? And how many, like if I have 0 players or very few players that are part of that 34 double, then my hand might be forced, right? And I may need to just go ahead and wild card early, like you're considering.
Possibly, yeah. I think the hand being forced might come down to Salah. I mean, Liverpool doubling in 34, most probably.
Yep.
There's no way I'm not having Salah heading into game week 34. So that just might be the wild card done and dusted right there. And I just don't believe that if the more teams that double, the higher likelihood that you've got strong doublers already, or you don't have to, like the way managers had to really just funnel into game week 29. All their transfers had to be geared toward that. I think there's going to be a wider variety for the latter stages here, and I think you're not going to have to struggle to field that many doublers, or like the best doublers, the highest ceiling doublers. That's what I'm going to put the stress on is, do you have the best captainable doubler for 34? Yeah. Do you have the best options? Then you can sort of like plug in.
That's a good way to think about it. So I think that's, and if I think that's right. And if you feel like you've got none, right, and it kind of depends on Trent, right? Like if Trent's back healthy, and I don't think it's that hard to get Salah if. But again, you're right. I mean, it's like game week 31.
I think it is hard.
Really. Well, I don't know. I mean, I look at my squad right now. I have I could turn Son and Foden into Salah, right? Like it would. I've got a 1.4 million in the bank or something like that, and Son is 10.1 million, right? So that's what gets me to like 11.5. So then I would just need to basically free up 2 million. I mean, I could turn Foden into David Luiz or whatever. Yeah, exactly. I get it for you tomorrow. Amateurs, Brandon. No, but I think like there's somebody I could find depending on who doubles in 34, a Pedro Neto or something like that, right?
Well, yeah, Foden's gonna drop off the face of the planet as far as fantasy managers are concerned if City don't double in 34. So get it while you can with Mr. Foden.
Yeah. So, but let's talk, so you and I both, just like to check in, you and I both have a free hit, or excuse me, a wild card and a bench boost left. Is that right?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it does sound very paltry. It's sort of like
I don't know.
we're
Yeah.
getting ready to make our like last stand, like Butch Cassidy and the
Yeah.
Sundance Kid, and I'm like, I've just got like 9 bullets left.
Well, it's like our friend Sandambi just blows through all his chips like the first
Yeah,
weeks of the season.
the
You
wild
could
card
go
is
that
the
way too.
most powerful chip. I think most can attest, and so that's really what I'm looking at. The bench boost. I'm not sure. I'm
It's
not sure I can
it's a
plan a strategy around the bench boost. That's just a like come what may in one of the double game weeks.
Yeah, and it might just depend on which double looks better.
Yeah,
So again, I think I just wanted to introduce some of these notes, right? I don't really feel the need to have a comprehensive plan at the moment. I'm going to wait until they announce some of these fixtures. Hopefully, we get some news before Game Week 30, and that can sort of dictate our strategy a little bit. But it's good to know what's coming down the pipe, right? At least know when certain bands of teams are more likely to double than others, right? And we can sort of start to think a little bit about what might make sense from a kind of wild card perspective. I'm also just curious what your goals are now. Like you have it's 8 straight green arrows. I think I saw when you shared your team a minute ago, and I think that's something like I think it's like you have like 11 and 12 or something like that. And I'm in kind of a similar spot here. So what is your like I think because it's part of like the when you play an overall rank game and instead of like a head-to-head game, like it's in a head-to-head you're like I just want to win my league, right? But when you do an overall rank type game, obviously we have mini league goals and things like that that are too specific to really get into on this pod, but like from like an overall rank perspective, or I don't know if you can, I guess if you have mini league goals that's interesting too, but like what is your kind of updated goal, right? Like goals constantly shift when you play in a big game like this, right? 11 million managers. So
sure.
what is your current goal over the last 9 weeks of the season?
Top
10 weeks,
100K. That's the only goal. That's really as specific as I want to get, and I don't think I've come at the top 100K from this distance before. So I do feel like it feels eminently achievable if things go my way.
yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it's going to be easy to do that from like a
Yeah.
the current rank is 483K to jump over roughly 300,000 managers over the course of the next 9 weeks.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy.
But that's part of the fun of it, right? If it was like if your goal was 400K or something, it'd be like less less dramatic or exciting. Yeah.
My
Although
goal
I have
is
to
to
admit,
not delete
yeah.
my team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm at 305, and I also had a nice run of green arrows after a really rough start. You are both very similar boats there. But my goal is also 100K, partially because it feels weird, I think, to have a goal that's too specific. Like 50K doesn't seem achievable, and like 80K feels like a weird goal to have. Like who who I shoot for 80K. So like maybe if I get lucky enough to string together some good game weeks, I'll recalibrate to like 75K or something like that. But at the moment, I like 100K as like a good round number. Like if you and I both finished in the top 100K this season after being in like the 2 millions after game week 14, I feel like we would have to consider this like a great I don't know if I sort of call the season a success, but it'd be like an achievement to like sticking with it, right? And just sort of like powering
Sure.
through a bad stretch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's definitely relative. Look at game week 10, 3.2 million for me. The heady days of game week 3 at 517,000. I thought anything was possible then.
Hey, you're finally ahead of your game week 3 team.
Yeah.
That's something, yeah. That should have been your goal all along. Is just beat your game week 3 squad.
I know game week 3 me. Not a great version of myself.
No, I remember that version.
One of the worst versions of myself.
Unshowered. All right, you know what? The one thing we can also do in this pod, which we haven't had a chance to do in a while because there's been all these midweek and Monday fixtures, is read out the top 10 in the Always Cheating Super League. And number 1 in the Always Cheating Super League, by the way, Brendan, is number 8 in the world.
Wow.
So that's a fun tease for the top 10. So we've got in 10th, Hendogon. I'll say that. I'm not going to say the team name and the person's name. I'll just say the person's name. Ismail Mamanani. Wow, I added one too many M's there. Ismail Mama Niet is in 10th. Joe Costello in 9th. Peter Hefsmo Steege is in 8th. Nick Villaris is in 7th. Really, I love Brandon when reading out these top 10. Get a sense of the international quality of our listenership. Jake Holton is in 6th. Peter Stead in 5th. Chris McMenamin is in 4th. Loritz Poost is in 3rd. I feel like Loritz has been in the top 10 like all season long. In 2nd is Christian Larich. And in 1st, USS Mac Allister Ben Houghton. 21 points in the week, Brendan, yet he's still 40 points above everybody else in the Australian Super League and an 8th in the world. So serious congrats to Ben for an amazing season.
Never too late to join the Super League, our free listener mini league with more than 25,000 managers. Just go to alwayscheating.com. My vote for favorite team name this season does go to Loritz Putz with 46440-iPhone-12-Pro. Hard to beat that team name. If you think you've got something better, let us know.
It's a great team name. All right, Brandon. A quick shout out to the Patreon too. Thank you so much, all the Patreon supporters. I thought the Slack was a lot of for one thing, it's a great place to plan meetups all across the world. You're doing a Toronto meetup soon, right?
Yes, I April 13th. Let me see. Let me just pull up the calendar to make sure I've got that right. It's a Saturday. Yeah, Saturday, April 13th. Nice. If you live in Toronto or the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, as they call it up here, just hit us up with a DM or email us, hailcheaters@gmail.com. I'm trying to get an idea of how big this group could be, and then I'll figure out the...
You thinking like 2, 3
million? Yeah, exactly. Something akin.
No, we know that we have Toronto patrons, there's Toronto listeners, so and Canadians in general.
I've spent the last month. I've been here since January, and I've spent at least the last month scouting out potential like Premier League watching venues for the weekend, and there are a couple where I might be able to reserve a table. So that's why I want to hear from people in the GTA who could show up. So April 13th. Let us know, and let's call it the North American Tour, Josh.
Ooh,
because
I like that.
on April 13th, it'll be the first ever Always Cheating Toronto meetup in Canada, and then on the final day of the Premier League season, you and I will be together again in New York City, and we will have our last day of the season watch along party live in person, and we'll get a big group together for that as well.
That'll be fun. Yeah. And so that'll be my birthday weekend, less, Brandon. So that'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll be back at the Black Horse. I did have a classic Black Horse weekend, Brandon, with a couple Patreon supporters, in fact, Paul and Trevor. So patreon.com is where you can go to strategize. I mean, obviously the majority of what goes on there is FPL talk, of course, but there's a million different channels and a lot of different ways to meet people who may share similar interest to you and do meetups and hangs or just talk about movies or Gameweek 30. So you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. And Brandon, let's get into the main thrust of today's podcast. Okay.
Yes.
Which is, as everyone listening knows, this is one of my favorite themes of the season because I don't know why. I just think it's fun. I like the idea of the FPL season having an epic kind of sweep to it, Brandon. Like the narrative that there's a story to the season. It's part of the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody was saying recently that they felt like sometimes it feels like FPL is like playing a video game on the same level all the time. But I think, Brandon, when you but when you go through the Kings of the Game Week, the best team week over week, it does not feel that way at all, Brandon. It feels like an unsolvable puzzle that one must constantly try to. It's a million-piece puzzle that's missing. That's also missing like a third of the pieces.
FPL is definitely a jigsaw puzzle that you buy at a garage sale. And
exactly. You kind of hope it's all going to fit together. Yeah,
it's never going to be satisfying. It's going to be fun at moments, but never satisfying.
Yeah, exactly. When I named my Twitter handle FPL Jigsaw, I think people thought I was going with kind of like a saw. Like a saw. No, but no, it's my elaborate metaphor. In fact,
gotcha.
It doesn't help that I use the Jigsaw, the serial killer image for my avatar. Josh. It's confusing, but I love both things, and I wanted them both to be part of my branding. All right. So anyway, for anyone who's never listened to a Kings of the Game Week pod, every week the fantasy game puts together the best possible team for a particular game week. And that's basically if you could have as many players from any team, if you could if you could have 5 Man City players in some cases, or I think this first one has 4 Liverpool players. If you could just basically put together via magic the best possible team for a particular game week, it would look like this. Formations don't matter. Anything that's just the highest players. I mean, I guess you can't have more than 5 midfielders. Like the fundamental rules of the game still apply, but otherwise, that's how they do it. And the reason it's called Kings of the Game Week for us is because a couple of years ago, Budweiser, and what must have been a failed sponsorship idea, decided to sponsor this best possible team each week. And it was called the Budweiser Kings of the Game Week because Budweiser, of course, is the king of beers, Brandon. So they say, we're not doing free advertising for Budweiser, never. Sadly, yeah. But never. I don't know about never. Never seems a little strong. Big game with a large enough check, we might have to consider it, or one of their many subsidiaries. There's a lot of did I say that word right? Subsidiaries. That's a hard one to say. I kind of
subsidiaries.
I just let it all slip out there. Yeah. All right. So anyway, but they stopped doing that. But something about the idea of Kings of the Game Week as a name always struck me as very funny. So we're going to do a review of game weeks 21 all the way through this last game week 29, and just try to remember some of the stories, some of the narratives that took hold over these last handful of game weeks. So Brendan, I'm going to kick things off with game week 21. Okay.
Yeah.
And I am going to pull it up here for your amusement and infotainment.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So game week 21. Here we go. We've got ourselves a 3-4-3 formation. And Brandon, look who is right there at the top. Diogo Jota, the oft injured Diogo Jota.
Too often.
Too often, sadly. Not enough to be trusted, honestly, in fantasy or probably when it comes to actual literal team building for a club like
when
like
he's
Liverpool.
Good, he's good though. The thing about Diogo Jota is basically whenever he's fit, he's good for fantasy points. When he breaks down, you can easily jettison him. Like he is the rare fantasy asset that is frequently injured but never falls into the troll category. Because
that's true.
He is reliable
when he plays. He does well. I totally agree with that. I don't dislike him. I just he is injury prone. I think that's a fair assessment of
very fair. Yes.
Yeah. So this is as you can see, Brandon, this is a very Liverpool heavy team. Now this team for Game Week 21, this was mid-January, I believe. If you pull these up on your screen at home, Brandon, you can see that these were the January 12th fixtures, right? So the first, it was a really chaotic stretch, I have to say. The month of January, I think there were only two total game weeks in the entire month, right? Because you had the festive fixtures, then you have FA Cup weekend, then you had this run, and then you had the 2-week game week, right, where you had 5 fixtures one weekend and 5 the next. So It was kind of a long stretch. So I have to admit, I don't really remember these 19 points for Jota. I just can't remember. Now this would have been when Salah was at AFCON. I know that, and so that I think he does tend to shine a little bit when he's given kind of a central role. But do you remember that a 19-point Jota haul? This game?
Well, I mean, it was a smashing of Bournemouth. But I can't picture it. I mean, the one thing that I can picture from this game week was the Gabriel brace for Arsenal
yes.
Against Crystal Palace, which as a Saliba owner, that it was a Gabriel goal and assist and an own goal. That's the one that lives long in the memory. I feel like this might have been a game week in which I was left in the dust a little bit. You look at all the scattered hopes and dreams here. You really had to stick with players that you believed in. Darwin came along with the Liverpool haul with double-digit returns. You had to not bench Palmer. Like every week that Palmer gets double digits, how many managers do we hear from, Josh, who bench?
You just have to start him every week. Exactly. I mean, he had a goal. He had a goal and assist in the FA Cup, right? Like today, this morning. It's incredible.
Yeah, and then was this the Arsenal match against Palace in which Martinelli came on and scored like 2 goals in in just an injury time, which is just like a complete rubbing Crystal Palace and Roy Hodgson's face in the mud.
Yeah. I think so. And I like that Ings is in this squad as well, because you always get. It wouldn't be a king of the game week, Brand, without a true wild card in there. I also love 10 points. Actually, it's rare for a forward to get 10 points. It's a weird haul,
Yeah.
right? That's like I don't even know. It's
Like
like
you
a
got a
goal
2-point conversion
assist.
or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe a substitute appearance, a goal and assist, and 2 bonus or something
He
like that.
got
It's a
2
hard.
assists
Yeah.
and 2 full bonus points. So that's
Okay.
the 8 right there.
There
And
you go.
what was it? He gets no appearance points. 6
Maybe you got a
plus
yellow or
8.
something. I don't know.
I'm
Who
not
knows?
seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 2 assists plus 2 bonus would make
Oh,
sense, right? That'd be
10.
6 plus
Okay,
2
yeah, he's
plus.
on
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
points. Yeah, okay, then he
Yeah.
got 2 appearance points. Got it.
Yeah, a 10-pointer for a midfielder, a little more common. I mean, Palmer himself had 10 this week, but at least you can understand the different combinations, right? Clean
Sure.
sheets and whatever. So yeah, and yeah, Hoyland. I think the other story was Bradley picking up 8 this game week as well, and the kind of emergence of him out of nowhere. Really, I mean, I'm not a Liverpool supporter, so I don't like follow the kind of their club team or whatever, but it was kind of shocking. Like it just like their kind of their depth is so impressive. The way they're sort of bringing all these young players through, right? And the fact that Trent, it's kind of interesting actually because Trent was really, I thought, quite poor to start the season. Got quite a bit better, and then has really battled injuries the last few months. But to have a player as good as Bradley kind of available, right, and he's kind of continued to play well. So it's
Yeah.
I know it's interesting.
And
Yeah,
this was
good
his
for them.
first start in the Premier League, at least this season. So,
Yeah.
and then we'll see what he does in game week 22. Well, no spoilers there, but
Ooh, should we go into it now? Let's all right. So
do it
that's
because to string it together, it's an 8-pointer for Connor Bradley in
Okay.
21, and surely he's
Ooh.
the top point getter. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube live, you'll see us sharing the team of the game week here on the screen. You'll see Connor Bradley featured right at the top there with 21 points. Just absolutely insane returns in an insane game week 22 for defenders, where you had 4 double-digit returners in Pickford, Bradley, Shar, who sort of said, Gabrielle, whatever you can do, I can do better.
I feel a little trolled by Shar, by the way.
Okay.
I had him for like 10 weeks and I got nothing. Like I got one shady assist on a pen where he kind of dived a little bit. And that was pretty much all.
Yeah.
I wasn't even getting clean sheets out of him. And then the second I dropped him, it was like goal city from this guy. Like he rediscovered his form.
Total goal city. That's and now Newcastle. All the defenders do is lose. So that's another conversation. Well, then you got rounding out these guys is Udogi, somebody we were talking about earlier in the pod. This, like looking at the attacking players, though, Josh, it's a bit of a mash unit. Lots of injured players here.
Yeah, I mean it's Elise and Eze both cracked this game week 22 squad, and it's kind of a shame that they feel like it's like there's like a version of Crystal Palace like going back to last year, right, under Patrick Vieira, where they were really fun and interesting and cool, right, and it's like it's sort of, but it never. It's like there, and then you have these little moments, right, where Elise and Eze are both healthy at the same time, which almost never seems to happen, and the kind of some of the young players click, like Mitchell, they everything kind of clicks a little bit and they look really good. And it's kind of funny because they never really seem seriously at risk of getting relegated, and yet it feels like they're kind of just, maybe it's just an FPL thing. I think from an FPL perspective they've just been kind of irrelevant for, I mean, I know like you can have a random one-off week where someone like Eze is a good pick, or but it just in general, it doesn't feel like it feels like it's been multiple years since I've really had to seriously consider having a player from their squad, right? Like maybe a defender is like a fourth option or something like that, right? But
Conor Gallagher is, when he was on loan at Palace, feels like the last time, and it was just a matter of there was a consistency to that run for Gallagher and Palace. But yeah, this season it does feel like Palace is maybe just playing in a different league, unfortunately.
Yeah, and hopefully I'm still like, I mean, you and I had a fun experience at Palace. It was it was a great match. Like it was a great atmosphere. Like I'm not a, I have love in my heart for Palace, Brandon. I don't want them to go down. I like their like their colors. I like their they're like a good they're a good club. I feel like they have in the Premier League, but just like you just want to see it all click one of these days, right?
I suppose so. I do not. I
You
don't
as
have.
much love.
I don't care
You,
as much
yeah,
about
you didn't
Crystal
enjoy the
Palace.
hospitality as much. You did.
It was fine. I mean, there was a weird fight in the stands where we were, and there wasn't a lot of chill happening there. And fair enough. Like, I'm just a tourist in East London, and that's some real stuff.
Yeah.
But
I was keeping my negative opinions to myself, but yeah.
But yeah, Crystal Palace, good luck in the future. We wish you well.
Yeah, whatever division that may be.
Yeah, wherever that may take you.
Yeah. Let's see. Udogi pops up with 10. Alvarez with 13, which I feel like was one of the larger Alvarez hauls of the season. And he's really been he's been an incredibly honestly, I guess it's the last handful of game weeks, but he was an incredibly consistent asset for the first 25 weeks or so of the season. Never really giving you like captainable returns, right? Like almost always in that kind of 5 to 9 range, which is great. I mean, like you can have an amazing season with players like that. But this was one of his top game weeks with 13 points. He picked up the I mean, it's kind of remarkable now because just because he's been back for a while now, but they really did survive quite a long time without Haaland, right? He was out much longer than we expected. I think it was around game week 17 or something like that when he went down. And it was like, at the time there was talk that he might be ready as soon as that weekend. And then suddenly a month later, and it was still, he was still not on the pitch. Right. And I think even after this game, it could take a couple more weeks before he was back on. So it was a good opportunity for Alvarez.
Just 8 goals for Julian Alvarez on the season, which is wild to me. Like if you try to cast about in your mind, you'd think at least 10, 10
assists, right? So that gives you a sense of how complete he is, right? The 10 assists. How many bonus points do you think he has in the season? Don't look.
I'm not looking. I would say probably 15,
17. Close. I don't know if that was good content or not, but I was curious. I was curious what you thought he had, Brandon.
I know enough to not go over. Price is Right rules. Never go over. Get close without going over.
You should have said 1 bonus point. That would have been the smart move there. All right, we're moving on to game week 23, and our boy at the top, Filbert Fodinsky. An incredible moment from Phil. I believe his full name is Filbert, right? Like the nut. I'm almost positive that's
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought it was Philadelphia last week, but that turned out to be an Academy Award-winning film. Somebody corrected us. Said, no, you're thinking of Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks. No, this is Filbert.
Filbert, like the nut, exactly. So I think I'm right in this case, though. I don't know why I'd make that up. That'd be weird. So Foden finished on 20 points. You and I both had Foden for this week. It was kind of a game-saving return from us, if I recall. I don't remember having it, especially. This would have been the let's see, game week 23 would have been the first weekend of February. So
I mean, shout out a player on this Kings of the Game Week squad, and I'll tell you if there was any hope that I had this player.
Yeah, I think when I look at game week 23 here, I can tell you quite confidently that. Oh, I think I had Watkins as well.
Sure.
That was when Watkins headed that. I think it was away to Sheffield. He had that.
Yeah, this was the famous car wash game. I remember consuming this Aston Villa game while waiting in a long line to get my car washed. And it was just like, my wife was so annoyed. She's like, how long is this going to take? And every time I reopened my phone when I tried to change up the playlist to try to make everybody happier,
were you driving or were you
driving? One of these drive-through car washes. Yeah, for sure.
No, but I mean, like if you were trying to watch the match, were you?
Oh no,
like,
I wasn't
watching.
This. No, I would have been consuming through like the FootMob app or something like that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but this was just another pummeling return for non-Watkins owners, and I remember this game week in particular was a battle between because Sheffield United was renowned for being a terrible squad.
Yep.
Many people had captained Ollie Watkins going into this match. And who would we have captained, Josh, in this match? It wasn't Watkins.
No, it wasn't Watkins.
Was it Haaland, perhaps?
Was he? Yeah. Was this like Holland's like first match back, perhaps? And yeah, that may be the case. Let's see if I can pull up this match here. Yeah. So
Or
yeah, Holland did play in this match, and
yeah,
I'm
captain.
yeah, in that case, I'm certain I captained him.
Yeah, same.
He got an assist in the match. Foden with a hat trick. De Bruyne with an assist as well. Oh, this is the match where Flecken got an assist. So keeping the FPL goalkeeper assist streak alive. I think like every season, the last few years, we've had at least one assist from a goalkeeper.
They don't call him Flick on for nothing.
God, he is bad, right? Aren't you glad you only had to have him for 1 week? Huh.
Yeah, he's terrible. I can't say that he was really to blame for. Oh, okay. So he wasn't really to blame for any of the goals scored, but there was probably the most comedic moment of the game week was when Flecken just put the ball down without realizing that Fofana was behind him, and Fofana just swooped in to, and I was just like had this moment of like, is this a professional league that I'm watching? I was sort of having to be subjected to Burnley hosting Brentford for God's sake. And
Yep.
then that happened, and then Fofana conspires to blow this opportunity somehow.
Oh, that was so painful. I mean, I brought in Fafana. I felt so, like so redeemed early on to get the red card. At first, I was like, actually hoping he'd take the pen, which he did, and I was like, that's okay. Early on, I'm gonna get some Fafana chances. He blows chance after chance after chance, and then gets quite an easy counterattacking goal, I have to say. Like it was one of those ones where he like pointed to where he wanted the ball, right? He was sort
Uh-huh.
of running. He's like, just put it right there, and I'm going to score.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. It was,
Bull,
and then
was it Zanka? I think it was Zanka, like just nowhere close to being tight
yeah,
enough on
schooled
Fofana.
him,
Yeah.
and then and that would have been good in and of itself. But then actually, when there's kind of a worthless goal conceded later, although it was useful for free hitters because some people had what's his name, the Burnley defender whose name I'm going to forget right now, but he was on a lot of non free hitters benches, and
Matt
so
Taylor. Somebody
yeah,
Taylor.
Taylor, yeah, Chris Taylor. So knocked that out, and it also put him into game-winning goal category. So even though he'd missed a zillion chances in that match, because nobody really had bonus points in that match, he was able to pick up two more. Like so he finished on 8 points, which was honestly the difference between a mediocre game week and I don't know why I'm talking about game week 29, but we're the focus right now is on game week 23.
We all
Glorious
anyone
game
wants
week.
to do listening to this podcast is to relive game week 29 over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
the Groundhog's Day of game week. I know it's always tough when there's a bad game week that goes right into the national break. Guarantees us about 9 listeners for an episode of the podcast. It's especially with international break. So hopefully people will find this, Brandon, like this summer when you're catching up on your FPL content. In
Evergreen.
summer 24. Exactly, very evergreen. So yeah, and then Ross Barkley with a classic. Barkley just nothing then something. He actually, I have to say, I mean, I did watch just because of the double and then the Sophie benches this weekend. I watched a lot of Ross Barkley over the last 3 matches, and I like watching him play. It's like he's found his level. Like it's being a kind of playmaker for Luton. Like it feels like he should maybe do a little more, but I thought he had some nice moments. Like he's a dangerous player. I don't know. What do you think about Ross Barkley?
Well, yeah. I mean, what more do you want him to do? I think he's playing very. I agree that he's found a good team for his skill set. I really respect how he's kind of stepped up to become like a Marshall in the midfield for that
Yeah,
squad. Like
yeah, not much
if
more
Luton
really, honestly. Yeah,
miraculously like survive, they will have to recruit like hell to get some more players around
yeah,
him. Like Andros Townsend really did not work out as the signing for
yeah,
Luton. And they just and I kind of like if you compare Luton to their opponents this week in Nottingham Forest, I really actually like to see promoted clubs do what Luton has done versus what Forest did last season, which Forest is just like screw our identity, let's bring in 50 players and let's just try to, the badge is worth more than
yeah,
any continuity. Luton have done, I think, a great job of creating some continuity for club supporters and new watchers of Luton in the Premier League to be like, oh, this is what Luton is about. Here are the
yeah.
players that mean things to the club. And Barkley, yeah, I love how he kind of fits into that.
and they've scored 42. I pulled it up while you were talking. They've scored 42 goals in the season, which is I think more than I think they're tied with another team for like 12th overall, right? So it's so yeah, they've outscored, even though they're in the relegation zone right now, they're in 18th place. They've outscored like 40% of the league this season, which is pretty
They've
impressive.
only
For most
failed
teams.
to score in 2 matches this
It's
season,
really impressive.
which is
Yeah, yeah.
incredible.
I know. So they're in the relegation zone right now. They're 3 behind Forest and Everton, 4 behind Brentford, 7 behind Palace. So again, even though Crystal Palace, like, it feels like they never win a match. I feel like I can't remember the
Yeah.
last time they won a
I don't even
game.
know if they play anymore. We talk all
I
about
don't
Luton.
know.
We never talk about
I
Palace.
don't know. I don't know either. No one ever talks about them. You never see them play, and yet they're never at risk of being relegated. It's like the
I'll tell you
weirdest.
what. After this weekend, Josh, I've got my torch and my pitchfork, and I'm heading straight to the G Tech. I want
Ooh, wow,
Brentford down. I
wow,
want Brentford project over. Go away.
wow. That's
When
interesting.
Tony leaves this summer, like there's
Yeah,
nothing left for. And
I
Bomo,
watched.
I guess being back was actually exciting this weekend. And I
Yeah,
can't wait to see more of him. Maybe that'll supercharge the G Tech.
I did watch. Brandon, you reminded me of a movie called Night of the Hunter last night. Have you ever seen this movie? I'd never seen it before. With Robert Mitchum. You familiar with this from the
Mm-mm,
50s? Great movie. Highly
no.
recommend it. But the movie has there's a scene where an actual lynch mob breaks out, and it's in black and white, so it's sort of like shockingly intense. Really,
Uh-huh.
Robert Mitchum's an incredible villain in the movie. I highly recommend checking that out.
Nice.
All
I'll
right.
check out your review on Letterboxd.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't really. I like. I'm not much for the extended reviews in Letterbox. Sometimes I just toss a word in there or something just to kind of remember that I saw it. All right, let's move on to Game Week 24. We've got Rice right at the top there. Declan Rice, who has really emerged. I mean, it's weird because again, I don't know that I'll ever have him in fantasy. The problem with being a defensive mid on a good squad in the Premier League is you're still going to be priced fairly high, right? It's like you're not going to be at a fun price where it's sort of
Yeah.
appealing to bring you in, right? You're always going to be at least
5.5.
5.5. Yeah, let's see what he's at right now. He's at exactly 5.5. It probably hasn't risen or fallen. Yeah, he's moved up or down 0.1 on the season. And he's got, I mean, it's been a decent year for him. Let's see, he's got where are his goals and assists? Oh, I see, I scrolled across there. He's got yeah, I mean, 6 goals and 5 assists is I mean, if he was even 5 million, I think he'd be in a ton of squads, right?
Yeah.
But I think at 5 point, but there's something about 5.5, it's like it just, if you're not going to want to start him every week, and he kind of blocks out some other players you might want. You may want to have three Arsenal players, or like have the ability to have 3 Arsenal players that have kind of higher ceilings. But again, how high? He's the king of this game week, Brandon. So how much higher could someone else's ceiling be?
Look at this. You've got 12 points all across the back.
Yeah,
Reguilon, Barf, Gabriel, and Saliba, all with 12 points.
yeah.
And going back to the whole Gabriel Saliba rivalry, people will remember this game week very well. If you were a
Mhm.
Saliba owner, you felt like you finally clawed
Yeah.
some
He struck
points
first.
back.
Yep.
And then Gabriel got his goal, and it was sickening, to be honest with you.
But the rare match where you had 2 defenders get goals and clean sheets and no bonus points. You don't see that very often. That is rare. The double goal, clean sheet, no bonus point from those 2. And then your boy Flecken with 7 points as well. I'm shocked that was the highest return of 20 goalkeeper. Right? 7 just doesn't seem very high. Like you rarely see that as the top.
There's just no clean sheets in this league at the moment, I guess, is what that
I
tells
guess
you.
So I guess so. It's kind of funny though, right? Because you can kind of see where the germ of some of these free hit ideas comes from, right? Because you've got Flecken, you've got Reguilon, Mooney's as well. This is when Mooney's started to really emerge. And I mean, putting FPL aside, you've got to be so happy from a Fulham perspective, right? I mean, I don't know what he turns into, but he can play, like that's for sure, right? He's a
Totally.
solid player.
The goal in which it was kind of counterattacking and Anthony Robinson, who is
goal.
notoriously terrible at crossing. I mean, Robinson is probably the first player to get offers or higher bidders or suitors, I guess you'd call them. He has had an incredible season, but the way Muniz then controls with one touch, slots it in with the next.
Yep.
That to me is the full evolution of a number 9, where Muniz comes into the season as am I even going to get minutes? I've never scored a goal in the Premier League, to that goal. And I mean, Armando Broja not fit to make the squad. I think maybe they're filing some sort of annulment papers.
You think there might be a Kim Kallstrom situation going on here, like Arsenal's famous player they bought with the broken back. Yeah, I don't know, and I think it's just impressive to me because, like, I'm sure he could live off his father's residuals, right? He must have set up some kind of trust fund for him, right? So it's like, when you're a child of Malcolm in the Middle,
he is still in syndication. You can watch it pretty much anywhere now. Still,
absolutely. Bryan Cranston really, it was kind of his breakthrough.
Lots of
series as well.
Stars that their
so for him to
still
for him to still have that fire, Brandon, I think is
clearly playing for the love of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So congrats to him. Then we have our first kind of big Haaland performance. Haaland gets a brace. And let's see. I guess, I mean, it's interesting. I guess the story really was when Arsenal, I had kind of written them off from less from a fantasy perspective, more from like, could they win the title perspective? They didn't, they had a really rough run in December, and it was like they had that West Ham match. Remember, they lost it at home, and it was like, okay, this is it's just going to be another kind of, not a full-on collapse, another kind of disappointing season. And this was the match where it was like, I can't remember what the final score was. It was I guess it was no, this is I got
5-0
Gameweek score. Yeah, 5-0. I had to update the game week score at the bottom here. Yeah, so that was like the match where it was like, okay, like maybe they could actually pull this, pull something off here. And because it was such a complete performance, right? And I think Declan Rice, it's appropriate that he is the player of the week.
West Ham 6-0. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. I caught up.
You caught up. Yeah. It took me a second to catch up as well. This is great content though. But it was, so it's, and that was away to West Ham. So, an awesome week for them. And then, Bruno Guimaraes shown up with 15 points. I feel like it's been kind of I don't know how much you hold him responsible for some of the failings at Newcastle. It feels like he has not shown quite as brightly as he did last year, right? Like, he's never like a great fantasy asset, but I don't know. The returns are similar. 4
the
goals.
Club is so reliant on that full starting 11 being fit, and with Pope out still, that's it. They're toast.
Yeah, they really need Joe Linton to return. Like, he's shockingly like
Joe
possibly
Linton.
Joel Linton, Joe Linton. I don't know how. Do you know how to say it? Well, why are you correcting my pronunciation? You know how to say it.
It just sounded to me like you just called him Joe Linton.
I kind of did, but calling him Joel Linton feels.
You've got to. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it, but you just got to kind of pretend. You just sort of just be like Joe Linton.
Joe Linton. Yeah, it's like Richarlison, which is not a word that just stumbles out of your mouth, right?
No.
It's you got to really think about that one. Although it was.
And Joe Linton.
Yeah. Although I was saying that it took me a while to get Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang out of my mouth, right? When he first joined the Premier League. It was like it was like I could never quite, and I like people shortened to Abba. But at some point you're like, yes, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, of course. Like, how could I have ever not known that? The rest of my life, I'll remember how to say Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for him.
Sure. And what about Pierre-Emile Højbjerg? Have I got that right? Let the fact
Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
And I'm probably and is even Emmerich, is it Emmerich, whatever. Now that I'm leaking confidence all of a sudden, Brandon, but whether I got that one right at all. Let's move on to Game Week 25 though, Brandon, before we linger on my pronunciations any further. Game Week 25 was the McAllister match. He finished on 17 points. Yeah.
This is basically like this is midway through the semester where your teacher is like, all right, I'm going to need y'all to read this book in the next week. And you're just kind of like, oh, groan. Grapes of Wrath. This is the Grapes of Wrath, Kings of the Game Week.
This was a tricky game week because it was the double for Liverpool and Man City. Yet we didn't really know what was happening with Haaland. right? And there were a bunch of injuries, and I brought in on a hit. I brought in Jota and Darwin, and they combined for a goal in the first half of that Liverpool match, and like the Liverpool's first match. And I was like, oh, this is incredible. Like this is what incredible. They were playing Brentford. I was like, what, amazing start. Great finish from Darwin. It's like he's finally found his confidence. Darwin goes off at, I think Jota went off like at the 30th minute, and then Darwin went off at halftime, and suddenly I had no Liverpool players for the next 135 minutes of match. And that was a pretty tricky double, this one.
Yeah, and the triple captain on Erling Haaland, and you don't
want
to see your
king of the game week.
If your triple captainer doesn't hit kings of the game week, you done something wrong.
Yeah, he did outscore Solanke by 1 point. But yeah, I think now it's sort of I guess we just I don't mind the decision. I don't think we did anything wrong with this one necessarily, but certainly it does seem like the people who've held their triple captain are going to have lots of opportunities in game week 34, 36, 37 to double, especially with a team like Liverpool, where they're only really playing for the Premier League now, right? They're out of the FA Cup. They're out of, they're in Europe, but they're in the Europa League, right? Like they're certainly not going to prioritize that over the Premier League. So I do think there's going to be some really good double chances later. But I think for at least we cracked double digits with Haaland. I think he got 2 points in the first match and 8 in the second, if I remember correctly.
Bless this man.
Yeah, and then Kanji, Walker, Dunk, just junk all around. Brandon, Gakpo. That was, I guess, that was the pick. Yeah, it was. There was just really, and he only got minutes, right? Because Darwin went off. So this was a game week to forget, Brandon. So we're gonna move on. Okay, let's move right on to game week 26. Okay, this would have been the last weekend of February. I remember it well, Brandon. It was very cold, unsurprisingly, very cold and bitter in New York that weekend. But who wasn't feeling bitter was Gerard Bowen, Brendan, to finish on 20 points in game week 26. Kind of right after everybody sold him for doublers in game week 25. So it was kind of a dream scenario for me, someone who hadn't had Bowen all season, to see everybody sell him ahead of this great return.
Sure.
You had him as well, right? And I think you were also one of them.
I sold him for Jota for the double in game week 25. And ultimately, I think Bowen owners have been relatively vindicated in that he's just kind of popping up.
Yeah.
There's nothing that disproves the people who sold him, but there's everything to vindicate the people who held him. So everyone is kind of winning right now in their own weird way.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. He just jerks in and out of man. Like, I don't know. It's like I guess he's fine. I mean, like in the end, it's like you look at the end of the season and his numbers are good and he's doing stuff and he's just not a superstar, right? And that's fine. Like he's a very good player who is a bit streaky, right? And is prone to.
I think he's got superstar potential. He's just playing in a weird West Ham team right now. A West Ham team that, as we discussed, I think on our Patreon pod, is doing better than I think West Ham supporters want to let on. But still, I think if you're in a team that's with Antonio coming in and out, it's clear that however Moyes set out to play without Antonio didn't fully take hold, and Antonio coming back in has kind of helped. And I don't know, it's very odd, but I could see Bowen basically becoming Diogo Jota at Liverpool. Say, imagine a scenario in which Klopp was still at Liverpool, Jota didn't exist. I could see Bowen doing what Jota is doing there right now.
Yeah, I guess that's true. There's something about him. He doesn't seem like hugely athletic to me, but I can't tell if it's just like a body shape sort of thing. I don't know. It's like I feel like everyone at Liverpool is like super like athletic, and like I don't know, but like maybe I'm just. I don't know. He plays 90. I don't know. It's like
I was like, where is this coming from? What have you seen from Bowen that
doesn't seem like a super athlete to me? Like he feels like one of those guys that comes up from the championship who's like really good, but doesn't quite like they have like a little bit of like a ceiling. And I think sometimes athleticism is the problem.
Yeah, you sound like my gym teacher when I was trying to qualify for like the presidential fitness test, trying to climb the rope.
Listen, if you're like Nikola Jokic, then it's fine. Like he's not quite at that level though, right? So I don't know. All right. Well, that's let's look at who else we've got in game week 26. We've
Douglas
got,
Luiz, I think, has
yeah,
to be mentioned here because,
yes, perennially underrated.
yeah, yeah, and I guess it's sort of like everyone he teeters on this edge of great player, great midfielder. Is he a fantasy asset though?
Right.
And look across this midfield: Bowen, Douglas Luiz, Kai Havertz, Jordan Ayew, and Leon Bailey. It's a
No one more than
very
7.5 million, I think.
yeah. This
8
is a
million
very
tops.
affordable Kings of the Game Week. Even across the back, American Chris Richards, Calvin Bassey at Fulham, Aiden Nuri, Emerson,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
lesser Emerson Ederson
That's
in
true.
goal for
This
Manchester
is
City.
an 11 you could buy for about 55 million pounds, Brandon. So
I went down to the store and I bought. I don't under. Yeah, no people are like, I don't understand what the big deal is with fantasy. I went to the Dollar
These guys
General
for
and I got this.
60 million pounds. Exactly. Sometimes I do wonder if that is like a possible version of the game where you literally just like, I guess this is like kind of like a daily fantasy type thing, but like where you literally just field a new squad every single weekend. Like that would be a kind of interesting challenge, wouldn't it?
Oh,
I don't know.
sure.
Maybe that would, like that. I could see I could see some of the downsides here, but like if you basically had all of the FPL rules except you were able to field an entirely new 11, maybe it's too much work for many people. But interesting idea. Probably a path to frustration, but you'd certainly see more variability in teams. That's for sure. All right, let's move on to game week 27. There he is, Filbert. Someone said Dr. Phil Foden. Yeah, Phil is just a name that lends itself to a lot of nicknaming, doesn't it, Brian? I mean, we now know that he officially is named Filbert after the nut, but before we knew that, it was sort of, there were a lot of possibilities.
Sure, I can see the headlines now. Phil Foden comes off the bench to score a game-winning goal, and the headline is "Fill in."
Exactly. This is like you could use that for anything. Like any newspaper. All right. So you have a lot more Arsenal. Again, the Arsenal are starting to dominate the Kings of the Game Week. Kirior, who's become a really nice kind of, I don't even really know. I mean, he might just be better than Zinchenko. I'm not certain. It's sort of funny because like Zinchenko struggled with injuries so much that it's like, remember there was the idea that he was going to be like a midfielder, right? It was like he was basically going to be like Havertz or something, and he's basically been so injured that all he does is sort of pop on and play like left back, right, when he's available. So yeah.
Well, and I don't think he's been very good at that. Has been the problem.
Yeah.
Is he just gets skinned alive when he's on the defensive. Yeah. He's kind of like a Trent, where he was playing the inverted fullback, and when Arsenal was in possession, it was fine.
Yeah.
But in terms of Arsenal transitioning to out of possession, it was horrible. And Quivior seems much better suited for that, and I guess commendable to the coaching staff there at Arsenal.
Yeah. Another Martinelli, who's, I guess he started to come on a little bit this season. Still a pretty frustrating year from him, but battled some injuries as well, I suppose. And then Mooney's again popping up here. Areola with 13. This was the match when many of us benched Areola.
Pen save.
The pen save. And then he also got, I think they were away to Everton. He also got I think just like 9 saves in that match as well. Phil Foden once again. And then Wilson, who, like Harry Wilson, has had I think honestly it's a testament to how well Fulham have done this season that a wide variety of Fulham players have shown up in this Kings of the Game Week, right? Bassey, Mooney's, Wilson. I wonder if we've seen have we seen the who's the Arsenal ex-Arsenal player? Iwobi. Have we seen Iwobi yet on this Kings of the Game Week?
Yeah,
we might next week though. And then Watkins, just like, it's so interesting, like the way certain players just pop up again and again and again. And Watkins, it's like we don't even talk about when we do these Kings of the Game Weeks recap because he shows up so often, right? But he's just incredibly strong, incredibly consistent season. So credit to him. Foden as well, honestly. All right, Brendan, that brings us to game week 28. Nope, sadly, if it wasn't for the double game week, maybe we would have seen Iwobi here. But we've got Son with 17, Semenyo. I think he was really the the secret kind of underground star of Game Week
Yeah.
28. We often get asked questions like, if I want to be a little different for a double game week, who do I go with? And he was one of those. He was one of those ideas, and he was hard for people to get in, myself included, right? Because it made sense, I think, to default to Solanke, right? Because he's been so good this season. He's sort of a double threat, right? Because he can also create chances, or a double threat fantasy wise.
And he's on
But
penalties.
yeah,
it would be
he's on
crazy
pens.
to
Yeah.
give up Holland or Watkins. I mean, one would say, I'm not sure if it's true, to
Yeah.
get both Solanke and Semenyo, and that was the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And with the blank, it was like, if you were going to do it, it made more sense to go with Carlton Morris, right? Because he played in 29. If Bournemouth
Yeah.
had played in 29, I actually think that really would have changed things. I don't think I would have free hit, for example. I would have probably just sort of muddled through with that one.
Yeah.
Probably true for many of us. So yeah, just a really interesting game week. I mean, thankfully we got a really good match out of it, right? That was something we talked about on last week's pod, which is that sometimes fantasy doesn't go great, but as long as you're still having fun watching games, it kind of redeems itself a little bit. And that 4-3 was terrific, right? The Bournemouth Luton match. And so and we all got like a little bit of something out of that match, right? Like especially just the goal and 2 bonus points from Solanke sort of made us all feel a little bit better about bringing him in and captaining him for that game week.
Two things to say here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bruno Fernandes, what are you doing here? There's the door. Please use it.
Yeah.
Ben White, second king of the game week team in a row. I want to know, what does an assistant coach on the English national team have to say to Ben White that's that bad? Also, like, what does anyone have to say to Ben White ever? Like, the world's seemingly like least interesting fullback. I mean, he looks cool.
We're going in on him twice, because that's exactly what I was saying before. We're just like he's getting a real what for on this podcast, Brennan.
I just like, if you don't want to be there, Ben White, don't make it about some drama. You don't even have to talk to the media.
Okay.
Just go.
You don't want a whole Gio Reyna situation.
People who make drama over national teams are losers, in my opinion.
Jeez, you're salty tonight. I like it.
I'm trying to bring some opinions, some strong opinions here. That's content.
That's true. The anger, you're bringing the anger tonight. That's for sure. That's one side of it. I'm bringing the joy though, so it works out.
Sure.
I'm all lightness and fun, and you're rage, and I think that's good. It's a good balance. You're like Lewis Black over here, just like really like going for it.
Yeah. I would love if Lewis Black just decided, I'm only doing football content from now on.
Yeah, exactly. I would listen to a whole special of that, but I listened to a 48-minute Netflix special of him doing that. All right, that brings us to game week 29. Wow, so you actually could have fielded a 99-point team in game week. I'm actually
no
kind of
conceivable
shocked.
way to get to 100 unless you had a triple captain or a bench boost.
That's true. It's literally impossible. That is kind of remarkable, isn't it? So yeah, let's see. We'll start at the back here. Robinson, Castagna. I mean, the trick really was to go all in on Fulham. Leno, Robinson, Castagna, Lukic, Muniz. There's literally 5 Fulham players in this best 11, and I have owned Robinson all season. I hate that I didn't have him for this one. I had Lukic at the start of the year, actually, and so he picked up a goal in this one as well.
His first ever Premier League goal. So, that's a bit of good fortune.
I didn't keep him. Yeah. And Soufal, I was shocked that I think Soufal has now 7 assists on the season, which
he's been doing well of late, for sure.
Yeah.
He came into a free hit draft that I had cooking, and then it was just kind of down to, what do I think is going to happen in this West Ham Villa game? Yeah. And with both teams to score, I just augured away from both defenders, like both Villa or West Ham defenders. And I knew, and I said to you, this game week is going to come down to which version of Fulham shows up against Spurs, because we were all on a free hit, going to go full triple Spurs.
Yep.
And Fulham had the ability to shut that down.
Yeah.
But Spurs equally had the ability, if they actually were ready for that match, to bring us some fantasy gold, and it just
Yeah.
didn't happen.
I guess the upside, such as it is that it wasn't like if you'd gone all in on Brentford, that would have worked out well or whatever, right? It wasn't like, like if like captaining Tony actually would have been even worse than Son, for example,
Yeah.
right? So it was hard to like, that's why I'm not like going to sweat this game weight too much, because it was hard to see a path, like an alternate version of my free hit that like worked out
Yeah.
really great, right?
I really feel bad for
yeah,
managers who did captain Tony. I was very close myself. It felt. I mean, it was his birthday, for God's sake,
I know,
and it just couldn't have gone any worse. And I
yeah,
feel like I don't know if it would have been much different if Reguilon hadn't got that red card, because Burnley really just came flying out of the gates, and they were ready for that match. And I think it
yeah,
really just did drive home how bad
yeah.
Brentford,
I
how
think,
bad their form
I
is
mean, Burnley
currently.
were like only scoring, like they weren't practically scoring own goals on themselves, and that like, no, was that no? Actually, I think that was that Luton. There was some, I can't remember who it was now. Maybe it was Burnley. So like there was like an own goal that was conceded like right away, and in that match, like a back pass. Was it Sells who made the save on that? You remember that?
Yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
you're thinking of Burnley. You're
Oh
thinking
yeah,
of Burnley.
I'm thinking of Burnley. Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, it was just a weird week, and Chris Wood is the only one that I mean, it kind of worked out fine, 8 from Fafana versus 9 for Wood, but he was the one that I did actually kind of want this weekend, but I just was too worried about the Awaniyi idea, like the idea that he might start over Wood, especially because Wood had blanked the week before, and so that spooked me just enough, and then Wood scored early, nice goal too, like the whole goal was really nice, kind of start to finish that
Sure
match.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. Morgan Gibbs White passed to Wood. So yeah, so that's that. There is a 99-point version of a team, even in the worst game week that most of us have ever seen. You still could have had almost 100 points if you put it all together. Actually, you would have had to break the rules of FPL in this case, Brennan, because you would have had to somehow find a way to field 5 fill-in players. Well, let's say you could. Let's say you could break the rules of FPL, and this is the
Sure.
team that you would have.
There's no chip for that.
Yeah. There should be. There really should be a break
Yeah.
FPL chip. Ooh, I think I like that. The idea of that chip. All right. Well, that is your pod. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. Enjoy the week off. We'll be back next Sunday with our Game Week 30 preview. And Brennan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Absolutely. Thanks, as always, to our Patreon supporters, and most of all, our producers for sticking with us through this season. Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Bob Ascoon, James Holland, Dave Wegner, Lodal, Nick Wright, Lazaros Janos. You're deleting something. You're moving the running order. I can't.
Sorry. Okay, I'm done. All right. Lazarus Yanos. That was the last one.
Okay. Lazaros Janos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wildlings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Vulgar Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Cram, Thomas Tislov, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Frode Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lolly, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Gareth H., Rune Sandberg, and Brian Clark. Watch this episode back on YouTube to see our teams, to see all the kings of the game week shared on screen. Right. Go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@alwayscheating. Hit that live tab. That's where you can catch future episodes of the Always Cheating Pod. Rate, review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us wherever you get your social media. Follow and go to our website. You can't really follow a website, can you? You got alwayscheating.com.
RSS
sure.
exists.
I guess throw it in your Readly.
Yeah, Feedly.
Whatever. Yeah, Feedly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
RIP Google Reader. All right. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week. Bye.